My name is Jessup White. I'm the founder and the president of Waymaker Legacy and Wealth. We're a retirement planning shop just off of Oviedo on the Park, sitting on Oviedo Boulevard, and we guide folks who are about to retire and folks who have recently retired through decisions like, how am I going to create income out of my investments? What am I going to do about taxes along the road? How much am I supposed to pay? How am I going to ensure that this income plan keeps up with inflation? And ultimately, how am I going to optimize the situation that I have? So what I want to cover today with you are the three biggest mistakes that I see folks make heading into retirement. Mistakes of not asking the right questions, and often mistakes of just overlooking some bigger risks that are lurking out there in the world of having to manage all of this stuff yourself. Now, a little bit of background on me, where Waymaker came from. I grew up in Kansas. My name is Jessup. I'm not named after Lake Jessup, but I grew up in Kansas, spent over 10 years in this industry, and what I did was worked with financial advisors all across the country. I worked with independent financial advisors. I worked with advisors who worked with big box firms, many of the guys that you see in commercials and advertisements here left and right. I worked with agents. I worked with fee-only advisors, and what that allowed me the opportunity to do was understand this industry from a really high level and from a really unique lens. Having seen all these different philosophies, different messages, different ways of doing things, different beliefs about how investments are supposed to work. And what that allowed me to ultimately do was be very intentional in how we created Waymaker Legacy and Wealth and ensure that we can provide a boutique experience for our clients. I love the corporate world. I loved having a big team underneath me in my last career. We moved down here not so long ago here late last year to start this business off on our own. But what I've really enjoyed about the change is being able to be more hands-on, is being able to ensure that every plan that we put together is really nurtured for the best interest of our clients. So as we talk about these three biggest mistakes that I see retirees make, we're going to start with number one, which is thinking investments are the plan. Now, I don't blame retirees for this. I don't blame any individual for it. Frankly, financial advisors are a lot of the reason that folks think this. I meet with people in our office, probably meet 10, 12 new folks every single week. And when I sit down with them and I ask them, what's your plan? Like, what is your plan for retirement? Generally, the first thing that they pull out are some statements. Here's some statements I have from this broker. Here's some statements that I've got from my employer today. Maybe you got an account from somebody somewhere else, like a beneficiary account. And their belief of the plan is that it's the investments. It's that I've got stock holdings here. I'm in this ETF portfolio, whatever the heck they think that they're in. And folks, investments are important. At the end of the day, that's what we do for a living. I'm a financial advisor. But when you ask your advisor, if you have somebody helping you with this stuff, when you ask them, what is my plan? And all they do is point to a bundle of investments, they point to a sleeve, they point to a portfolio. Folks, they're likely not working all the way in your best interest and giving you real advice to optimize your situation. A plan isn't a bundle of investments. What a plan does is it tells us how we're going to take those investments and turn them into income for the rest of our life. It talks about how that income is going to keep up with inflation, as we know the need to grow that income changes as we get older and older and older. A plan looks at how much of this do I actually get to keep at the end of the day, right? We've spent our entire lives taking income and turning it into savings. And now that we're about to take savings and turning it into income, we need to understand, well, what tax bracket are we going to fall in? Are there extra deductions that we get in our retirement years? How does Medicare play into this whole thing? Now that I'm leaning on the government with things like Social Security and Medicare, how does that play in from a taxation standpoint? Speaking of Social Security, when do I take this thing? And do my wife and I take it at the exact same time? How much of it is going to get taxed? And ultimately, what I find most folks want to know is that they're going to be okay. They're looking for peace of mind. They're looking to ensure that when it comes to Social Security, they have maximized their benefits. They're getting the most out of it from a lifetime standpoint, and they've been made aware of different risks and opportunities in front of them because there are rules to the game of Social Security. And if your financial advisor is not well advised on those rules, you could be missing out on some pretty big opportunities to ensure that your spouse is protected and to ensure that you've maximized your income. So we got to think about Social Security. We got to think about taxes, understand how much of this do I actually get to keep? Folks, there's different phases of retirement. We're going to get into that here in a second, but we need to understand the long-term impact of taxes when we think about our later retirement years. We need to think about inflation. What about healthcare? One major health event, one large expense can very easily derail a well put together financial plan. So ultimately, I sit down with folks who generally have done all of the right things just about every day of the week. Most people have done a good job of saving. They've done a really good job of investing, and most people have put themselves in a situation where retiring with the lifestyle that they desire is absolutely realistic. But the person that's giving them advice on what that plan looks like, if all they're doing is talking about investments, and they're not actually talking about a plan that tells you how you're going to have income that lasts for the rest of your life, that regardless of the ups and the downs of the market, that we've looked at future taxes and how much of this you actually get to keep. We've looked at inflation, and ultimately what we've done is protected you. We've protected who the surviving spouse is going to be, and we've protected the next generation if there's heirs involved in this plan. If the person you're sitting down with isn't addressing that, you likely want to get a second opinion, and you can't get it from the person who gave you the first. So let's get into retirement mistake number 2. And that's understanding that while most folks I'm sitting down with are retiring somewhere around age 65, some are fortunate enough to retire before that, some are working until 70. But while most of us are thinking about this number 65, we need to also think about 75. Here's why. There's these things called our RMDs, our required minimal distributions. Now, for some of us in retirement today, that number is going to start at 73. If you were born after 1960, it's going to start at 75. And what this is the government and the IRS know that we have trillions and trillions of dollars sitting in tax-deferred accounts today. Sitting in tax-deferred accounts, we haven't paid taxes on this money. See, the Revenue Act of 1978 came out long, long ago. Major corporations of the world lobbied Congress and said, we don't want to pay for pensions. What we would rather do is introduce the 401k, and we're going to give people an opportunity to defer taxes. So now we have all this money that we haven't paid taxes on. Well, guess what? When these RMDs, these required minimal distributions come out, now you have to start taking income from those accounts, whether you want to or not. And here's where that can create a real problem, folks, is sometimes we sit down with people who are very rich in benefits. They've got large Social Security benefits. Maybe they've got pensions in place, and they may not be planning on touching that tax-deferred money. But when those RMD years hit, they don't have an option. Now they're forced to start taking money out of there. Well, that can create a real problem. That can force you into higher income brackets than you planned on being in. It can force you to hit what we call IRMA, which is your income-related monthly adjustment amount, meaning you're going to pay a higher penalty for your Medicare premiums, right? If we think about something that most advisors are not addressing, which is, what about the surviving spouse? We call it the widow's penalty. If there's one of us left in our later years of retirement, we're going to see our tax brackets cut in half. And if that happens at a time where these RMDs have hit, and now we're having to take income out of these accounts, we could be paying way more taxes on the money that you have put your blood, sweat, and tears into. We could be failing to think about how we properly plan the legacy of this money and pass it to the next generation. And ultimately, we could be left with a surviving spouse whose income is eroding because they didn't have anybody actually talk to them about taxes and understand the long-term impact of this money. So folks, again, as we talk about retiring at 65, it is all the more critical to think about what happens at 75 for most people watching this. For some of you, it's in your younger years, because we have a Congress, we have an IRS, and guess what? They know we have tens of trillions of dollars in tax-deferred money. They know that we are in the third lowest tax regime, frankly, in the history of this country. Other than FDR and Reagan, taxes have never been lower. So they know how much money is coming to them down the road, and they control what percentage of those tax dollars are going to go into their pocket. They're kicking the can out on when that money is due, but it is important that the retirees of this country understand how that fits into their plan, how much of this actually belongs to them, And how do we ensure that either of us, if you're sitting down with a spouse, are protected in the event that taxes do go up, are protected in the event that these RMDs hit us in our later years, and make sure that we've got a plan that addresses that. Last but not least, we're going to get into mistake number 3, and that is that retirement isn't just about growing money. I'm going to give you an example of why this is real quick. I do events 4 to 5 times a month all throughout the area here. We do food events, we do educational events, we do a lot of them at the amphitheater. And one of the questions I like to ask people when I start these events off, it's going to sound like a trick question, kind of is, just a heads up. Who's more prepared for retirement? Is it person A who has $250,000 saved? Or is it person B who has $2 million saved? Now, we're all going to say person B. And from a numbers standpoint, I probably agree. The reality is I've seen people with $250,000 retire very, very comfortably, retire within their means, retire with an actual plan that ensures they're going to be okay to and through retirement. I've also seen people with $2 million who are scared to spend money, who are worried they're going to run out of money. One of the biggest questions I get all the time is, what's the number? I had a gal in the office last week. She said, I heard the number is 1 million, and I'm really proud of myself because I just hit over $1 million in my account. I'm going to be okay. Well, as I sat down with this woman, she had way more than enough to be okay. And that's great news. It's wonderful news. But she's an example of many people I sit with where we're so focused on the number that we forget about what is that number supposed to do for us? How does that number turn into income? How does that income create the lifestyle ultimately that you want to live? So folks, as we get ready to retire, as we start getting adjusted to our new retirement life, we need to ask ourselves some questions if we haven't already asked them, which are, what am I even going to do in retirement? Folks, you'd be surprised how often people don't have good answers for me on that. Now, generally you see really common answers, which is we want to spend time with our grandkids, with our children. We want to travel. We want to volunteer. But it's a little bit different for everybody. And what I find is no matter how prepared you are from a financial perspective, time and time again, I see folks who haven't thought this through of what do we actually want to do and what is that going to cost us, right? So the game of retirement is very simple. Most people I sit down with, while many are excited to leave a legacy behind, they want to leave some money to their kids or whatever it may be, frankly, most aren't worried about that. Most are worried about ensuring that this money they worked so hard for is going to go to them and that it's going to last the rest of their lifetime. And so understanding how we plan for the future that we've been desiring, how do we create that vision? How do we adjust that plan when the markets aren't cooperating? How does that plan adjust if tax laws change? Folks, those are the questions we should be asking, right? Too often financial advisors love to sit down and tell you, hey, here's your rate of return. And here's where your number is gone. It's gone from here to it's gone to here. Now that stuff is important, but it's only important in the context of what it's actually producing in your life. Money is just a tool. All the financial products out there, whether we're talking about the market, whether we're talking about using banks and money market funds, whether we're talking about insurance products, life insurance, annuities, we can talk about mutual funds, ETFs, it doesn't matter which path we go, they're all tools. And frankly, all of those tools have a place which have the right fit and the right circumstance, depending on who you're sitting down with and what goals they're trying to accomplish. So we need to ask ourselves these kinds of questions when it comes to our money. What money do I have set aside for income? What money do I have set aside to protect me during the ups and the downs of the market? What money do I have set aside to keep up with inflation and keep growing? And then last, what money do I have set aside for liquidity in the event of some kind of a financial emergency? If you can't answer those questions, there's likely parts of your puzzle missing. So listen, we've covered a lot here today. Talked a little bit about my history. We talked about these 3 major mistakes that I see folks make. We are here in Oviedo. Our roots are planted here. We're excited to be here. We've absolutely loved working with this community and the good working folks here that are in it. If you're still looking for help with your retirement planning, If you have an advisor in place and you're not sure that they're the right fit, if you know somebody who's getting ready to retire and ultimately you're worried that some of these mistakes might be real for you, we would love the opportunity to help. My recommendation is that you come to one of our events. We do them 4 to 5 times a month. It doesn't cost you a thing. Sometimes we're feeding people, so we're happy to give you a free lunch or a free dinner while you're doing it. Other times it's purely educational. If you want to come to one of our library events or one of our events at the amphitheater, but it's a great opportunity to take a deeper dive into the issues that frankly aren't getting talked about enough in this industry. Financial advisors are so excited to talk about numbers. They're excited to talk about performance. They're excited to throw different jargon at you, alpha, beta, standard deviation. And frankly, folks, I don't believe in doing any of that. Every now and then I sit with the engineer thinker that enjoys that conversation. But I found most people want to keep this very, very simple. Very simple. Our best clients can take the plan that we have built for them and they can take it back to their spouse or to a friend and tell them exactly how their plan works. It's not even talking about investments, folks. It's talking about income. It's talking about taxes, Social Security. It is talking about the things that make a real plan. So again, my name is Jessup White, founder, president of Waymaker Legacy and Wealth. You can find us at waymakerlegacy.com or feel free to stop by our office at 1025 Oviedo Boulevard. We're excited to be in this community and we appreciate you taking the time to watch this.